And what will happen is I'll go to my email and show you. Zoom will just like email you like a link to your recording when it's done. And if you hit share, you can either like send somebody the link to it, or I just like to have an MP4 that I can download, and it also downloads the transcript. So I've used this a few times where like I'll go to like a lecture that I don't feel like listening to, and I'll record it and then I'll throw it into chat, like the transcript, and then it'll give me like notes. Like let's say it's like a midterm prep session. Um, but yeah, this Zoom subscription that they give you is kind of sick. I don't know if the free one has like the record to cloud where they email you, but this one's sick. Um, I'm gonna just assume it's both of you today. I can also, if you guys want to just like take the time back and do whatever the fuck you want, like I won't be offended if you guys want to not do this session and like continue Tuesday. Um, but yeah, if you guys want, we can do some more JavaScript today. Um, I'm just gonna continue with it to throw the recording on anyways. Uh, were you were there Tuesday, right? You just left like 15 minutes early?
No, Brad. I didn't come Tuesday, Thursday, or Tuesday.
Okay, word. Were you there Tuesday? Okay, sick.
I've done JavaScript.
Okay, cool. Uh, are you familiar with JavaScript at all?
Yeah, I am. Is this for the portfolio?
No. The portfolio you can kind of just like do on your own time whenever you want. Um, have either of you started it or made any
No.
progress? That's cool if you're not. That's cool. It's like a nice to have. I would do it at some point before you apply to jobs. Completely honestly, I don't care if you do it for this semester. It's good reps, especially if you like throw it on Vercel and like do a little hosting. Um, okay. One sec. Let me see if this looks better. Okay. My mic looks like it's catching more for me now. Uh, all right, sick. So what I went over Tuesday for JavaScript is literally just like the bare bones. I'll give you both a rundown just in case you're like a little rusty. Uh, essentially, do either of you use Python? A little bit, no. JavaScript is not typed. So when we want to make a string, the way that we let JavaScript know that we're making a string, and here I'll zoom in. The only way that we let JavaScript know we're making a string is if we surround it by double quotation marks. We don't say like, you don't write like string name equals and then something. You know, like you don't let it know that. It's an untyped language, so it just infers from the value that you put in a variable what type it should be. That's like the only important thing that I went over Tuesday for JavaScript because we did like a like a recruiting session. Uh, Constants are the same thing, but things that are meant to change, you use let to declare them. Uh, when I say things, variables that are meant to change, you use let. Uh, Constants, how you doing? Constants that are meant to not change, you would just use const. Um, the const scheme is, I think, in C++. plus plus. We use it in Java as well. Something that I mentioned Tuesday, which is a cool fun fact, is JavaScript was written in 10 days by some dude that just wanted to jump on the hype of the language Java. Absolutely no correlation between the two. Um, they just sound the same because Java was blowing up and the dude that made JavaScript wanted to ride that hype train. So he wrote the language. in 10 days, and then it blew up beside it. Um, a couple other things that are just useful to know about JavaScript. Like Python and unlike C++, JavaScript is interpreted like from the source code. So we write code that's like basically English, and the engine or any engine that will run JavaScript takes literally just this code and runs it. The difference is if either of you have used C++, uh, we compile that language to machine code and then we can run it, which is just a big difference. Compiled code is normally much, much faster, but you don't run it on the fly like a website needs. You kind of have to like have a compiler and you take the source code and you put it into the compiler and then you get the machine code and then you run them. Like interpreted languages like Python, like JavaScript are meant to just be like go, go, go. Um, Whatever it is that we need run, or if we need the code that is going to be run changed on the fly, we would use something like JavaScript. Um, JavaScript is the thing that runs like the interpreters or the engines that run JavaScript. They lie one in every web browser. Um, so if you guys go to Chrome or Safari or Firefox or Edge. I think that's what Microsoft calls it. Um, and you do an inspect, or on Windows, it's F12. You'll get the elements. We've used this when we went over HTML and CSS. But if you come to the console, oh, you know what? Actually, that's fine. If you come to the console, what this is essentially a terminal for JavaScript. Um, which means we can just write JavaScript code. So if I do let, oh, this is from before. Uh, if I do let message equal hello world in the console, in JavaScript, just to remind you guys, we use a colon. And then if you do control enter, that'll actually run your one line. Um, so now we have a variable in my console, which is message, and it says hello world. And if I want to print it, we can just do a console log, which logs it to the console, which is what I'm in. Or console terminal, same thing, just console is in uh, Chrome's web browser. They just chose to call it that. But when you're in VS Code, it's called the terminal. Uh, and if we console log the message, we get hello world. Um, what else?
When you put a string in JavaScript instead of like you want to use English.
Yeah, we'll get to that. Um, JavaScript, you would use it. We primarily use it to communicate with a database, or at least I primarily use it for that. Uh, Basically, let's say your database is, I can just pull up a database for you guys actually. Um, so Firebase is a very common database. I'm curious, have either of the three of you guys used any database before? Which one? Oh, sick. Yeah, Spotify is a they have a great API. Has anyone used like Firebase or Supabase or Neon or I mean, we can go like to the source and just use like Amazon's database. Uh, but essentially a database is like a fancy Excel sheet, but there's like a ton of them and they're all just tables. So, this is going to be like how I was showing you guys Vercel. Um, what modern databases do is they go and they like rent out some Amazon database and then they kind of just like put a little wrapper on top of it and they make it like a little more user friendly. Um, I typically use something called Supabase. Let me see if any of my things will let us look at them. I think all of my stuff is going to be paused. Let's see if this isn't. No, that might not be paused. Come on. Yes. Uh, so this is a popular database named Supabase where you essentially get to like outline a bunch of Excel sheet style tables. We call this like SQL. Uh, SQL is literally just the way that you retrieve data, but when you structure it in a way that it's like a Excel style table, uh, we would call that like a SQL database, and then SQL is the uh, it literally stands for structured query language. So it's the way that you pull data from your database. Um, what is this? This is like an app that I made with a buddy that is essentially like Venmo wrapping to allow clubs like Koei developers to easily like collect dues from like a bunch of people and they link their Venmo and they just pay into the organization account and then there's like however many admins can access the funding so it's not just one person's Venmo and like super informal. The reason I'm showing you this is basically, and this goes back to why we'd use a string in JavaScript, is if I want my website to connect to this database, and I can show you like more easily what this even means. Uh, let's say I go to, hmm, table editor. Oh, can I not see? Oh, okay. So this is literally what like one of these tables looks like. It's like there's a column name, which might be an ID in this case. And at some point we can do a databaseless class so I can explain like why usually you want to have an ID or like a what a primary key is, because that's actually pretty cool. I fucking love databasing. But basically all of these are different data types. So you can see this is like text, this is text, and essentially sometimes I want my app to access the data in the database. And quite honestly, you just don't do that with HTML. Like you would use JavaScript to essentially fetch a big blob or like a bunch of rows of these, and it would put them in, let's say, like a list in JavaScript. And then JavaScript would have like numbers and strings and whatever. And then you would be using JavaScript to be like, okay, let's get the first 5 rows to show like a page of these things. And then like you click the arrow and then it fetches another 5 things from my table. Um, this was kind of overkill to answer that question, but basically like all web development will come to is essentially showing data and then having users do something that manipulates data and you save it to a database, which is just someone else has a bunch of Excel tables. And then at a later point, you fetch all of the tables from your database back into your website and you show them to your users. It's kind of like all it is. And then there's like fun stuff like you can do music or you can do anything with money. But when you do something with music or money or like, I don't know, most other applications at this point, you use someone else's code, which they just call an API. Um, are we all familiar with what an API is? Yes. Stripe makes it so that if you use any of their shit, it cannot be insecure. You can set it up wrong, but like I would never do payment on your own. Unfortunately, that means that Stripe or we actually used PayPal for this app. Um, but basically there will always be encryption, there will always be actual security measures. It's designed that way so that you can't really fuck up and you're not liable. Um, do we all know what an API is? If I were to ask all of you or either of you to explain to me what an API is, do you think you could do that? I like wouldn't be able to do that as of like 5 months ago. Um, you want to take a stab?
So it's like different, let's say you're YouTube or something, you might have an API that lets you somebody else like send requests and then you process those without like giving all your code to them.
That's valid. Yeah. Do you guys know what it stands for? Fuck, I might not have a marker. I know, it's one of those things that you kind of memorize and then you forget. Wait.
High school CS teacher was like being asked physics.
Mm. Um, this might be a better eraser. Am I getting rid of something that's no, this does not look important. API stands for Application Programming Interface, something like that. Um, all it is. Okay, I'm definitely not gonna find a marker, unfortunately. I might be able to whiteboard. Let me go here. I'll whiteboard a little bit. Um, so an API is an application programming interface. And the joke is it's kind of whatever you want it to be. Um, but in a lot of cases, like you mentioned, YouTube and Spotify, it's essentially someone else writes a bunch of code and they just give you instructions to use it. So let's break down what the fuck this massive acronym is. An application is someone else's app usually, or if you write an API for it would be for your application. And then programming interface is essentially saying it is a way for you to interface with someone else's application with them being okay with it. YouTube doesn't want you going around their database. Spotify doesn't want you going around their database. They've written something conveniently that lets us access their application or use their application without just like clicking with our fingers or a mouse. Um, Oftentimes, an API allows us to retrieve data from something. So, Supabase, for example, if I wanted to take my data from my tables, they write an API that says, okay, if I want to get data, I do the link to my table dot fetch dot table name dot whatever. And if I give them like my security token or my application does, they will return to me the data that's in my table. If I don't do that, they go, you don't have authorization, which is great because if they just let me rummage around, I would be able to see everybody that uses Supabase's databases and take everyone's data. Um, so oftentimes an API is kind of just like what sits in between a server and let's say like a client. And also oftentimes it's used to fetch data. Um, what's an example where you're not fetching data? There's an API that essentially, no, you're kind of always like receiving something with an API, but it's essentially someone else writes code and they write, it's almost like someone else writes a class and they give you the functions for the class and you can just use it and you get whatever it is that the functions are. Um, yeah, that's right. Oh man, should we do? We can do requests too. I say, because yeah, I find this to be much more helpful to go over like the networking side of it, because AI can kind of write code for us now. Let's do a little more JavaScript, and then we'll get into like fetch requests and like posts and puts and whatever it is like moving data from one to another. Um, yeah. Oh, there's so much good stuff because we've gotten over like the basics. Okay, let's go back. Firebase is another great database. I actually think in a week or two, actually, let me check. We have, oh, those. I actually hate the Duo things. Okay, so what?
I hate Duo.
It's so annoying because like the stale request garbage. So okay, so I am gonna be going home Friday just because I want a 9-day Thanksgiving break, selfishly. Um, so we have today, we have 2 sessions next week. I have an exam Wednesday, so I might cancel this one. Actually, I most likely will. I'm gonna do that now so I don't inconvenience you guys. Um, we'll have 1 session next week. Um, and then Thanksgiving, and then the week after that, we'll have 2 sessions, and then maybe we'll just kill it there. Or maybe we'll do like the 9th. Um, so we have like not too many sessions left is kind of the point of showing you this. Um, I say we do some JavaScript. That way we know HTML, CSS, JavaScript. I've showed you guys Vercel. So at this point, you can make what we call like a static website, something that kind of just displays stuff. It doesn't like put information somewhere or retrieve information from like a database. But we can go over databasing, I think, is like at a very basic level. And then is there anything else you guys are curious to learn? I think we should do like CRUD requests, which is, oh, one sec. CRUD operations. It's like create, read, update, and delete. We're gonna go over that. So basically how to like actually do an API request. Um, which is an HTTP request, which is interesting. So we'll kind of take a look at how the fuck that works through the internet. And it kind of relates back to the domains and like the Vercel class that we had. Um, I think I called that class the internet. If you guys think of anything else, let me know. Um, I'm happy to like make 1 or 2 of the remaining classes, whatever is most interesting or helpful to you guys. Um, Let me think if there's anything else. Yeah. Uh, were you both at the Tuesday session? Was it useful? I'm curious, like the beginning of it, was that stuff you did or didn't know?
I didn't know JavaScript, so it was useful.
Oh, I'm sorry, I meant the tech recruiting stuff.
Oh,
The only reason I ask is like if you guys want any more in depth on any of the stuff we talked about, like how to start planning out leak coding, if that's at all what you guys think you're gonna do. Um, We're happy to throw something together either for the fall semester, like the end of it, or spring. Um, are you a freshman?
Yep.
You don't have to do anything yet. You can wait till like junior year, to be fair. Oh, sorry. If you finish the boot camp, you will just be in the club. Like, I'll have like a final project on Google Classroom. If you guys all submit anything passable, you've come to this, like, I'm gonna trust that you guys are willing to put in some work and then actually be on our project teams. being in the club just means being on a project team. We do like 7 or 8 a semester. Uh, so you will have a project manager, they'll give you some work, you'll actually work on something for a client, there's real deadlines. I don't know, it's a little cooler. And then if you get the chance to be project manager, that's where it's like you have a fuck ton of responsibility and it's like awesome because you learn everything about making something from scratch. Um, yeah. Let's do a little more JavaScript. So we talked about objects last time. Um, if I was like making a quick form to basically collect information about somebody, and I wanted first name, last name, and your age. Let's say you're like signing up for a website. What I could do is with JavaScript, I could create an object. And what we were talking about at the beginning is you don't say like object and then the variable name. JavaScript just infers it by for an object, an open and then curly bracket, and then any number of things inside. Um, and you can access the object data by saying like the name of the variable and then whatever the name of like the first or whatever data, yeah, you're accessing.
How much closing bracket required?
Uh, let's see if it does a squiggly. Probably not. It's probably like an Oxford comma. I don't think it breaks anything. It might just be preference. Yeah. It's funny. VS Code actually might have some formatting thing where if like the company you're working for like wants commas before, like it might actually go through and just add one if you don't have it. Or you didn't ask? Oh, cool. I thought you had your hand up. Yeah. Objects are cool. You use them a lot. Like JavaScript, you're kind of always dealing with objects. Just because like this would be, eh, I'll just continue. But in JavaScript, you do deal with objects a lot. Um, we can write functions. Um, in C++, you write def and then function name and then any parameters. Let's say param1. So you guys are familiar with that. In JavaScript, it looks like this. We actually just say function. We don't write def. It's just this guy wrote it in a week. That's just what has been chosen. Um, the name of the function is still like C++ or Python, and then the actual parameters are going to be the exact same. Uh, and then yeah, functions can do anything. If you want it to return data, it can return data. You don't have to specify what it returns. So in C++, if it's going to return nothing, you write void, and then you have a function. Um, in JavaScript, it can return anything or not return anything. It's kind of annoying. And I'm kind of bashing on this like untyped nature of JavaScript because in industry and kind of just for convenience, we use something called TypeScript, which just adds types to JavaScript. Um, but you should like learning JavaScript first is probably better. Um, I'm just making you all aware. And then calling the function is the same as anything else. You would just use it, you'd use the name and then you'd give any arguments. Um, if I wanted to put this in this doesn't return anything. But if I wanted to like put it in a variable, if it did return something, I'd say like let result equal, and then uh you'd call the function. So same as any other programming language with functions. Uh, this is kind of niche. not niche, it's just like a not super necessary thing for learning JavaScript. But we can have lambda functions. Has anybody heard of a lambda function? It's kind of like an anonymous function. So, or this is kind of just shorter syntax. There's also lambda functions. Essentially, this is just another way to write a function. Um, you can always do function and then the name and then the parameters, or you can do function equals and then the parameters, and then you use an arrow instead of curly brackets. Usually you'd use this if you have a smaller thing. So something very simple like a plus b or like a console log. So this could actually be an arrow function as well. Um, the reason I bring this up is just it's like if you see it, don't be alarmed. It's just another way to write a function. Uh, yeah, we can do conditionals. Uh, these kind of speak for itself. You guys know if, else. It's not elif, like it's two words, else if. Um, and the syntax, like this is kind of just how all programming languages do it. But the syntax is like you can chat it, you can do whatever you need. But just making it like aware to you guys, there is conditionals, much like in other languages. For loops are kind of close to C++. It's just for the keyword, and then you set the variable if you want a variable, um, the breaking condition, and then each iteration, what happens. I- It's either C++ or JavaScript that's like very close to this. Or sorry, Java. Yes, okay, cool. Yeah, I believe that. At a certain point, you like once you've learned enough languages, you kind of forget all of them always, but you kind of like know the concepts.
What's there see a const in a function?
One more time.
Was it because earlier you had a const that was also something that returned something? So what's the const add?
Um, const means that whatever's inside of it's not changing. If for some reason you wanted to change what the function was doing,
You can do that?
yeah,
Shit.
you can change like what the function is gonna do inside of the function body if you want to. That just like to me, that's just fucking confusing. And I would hate it if someone was like, because then you have no idea what it's doing and it's like a black box. Um, and yeah, I mean, I'd hope you do a const if you're gonna arrow function and like make a variable for a function. Um, yeah, there are while loops as well, same exact way. Okay, wonderful. So that's all the basics. Yeah, one more time.
What extension do you use?
For files.
Yeah.
Do you mean like a, oh, you're saying how do you run it in VS Code? Um, so you can use Chrome, so you can like in an index.html. Uh, wait, let me find one. Okay, so in an index.html, we know that you can link a style sheet or a CSS sheet with the link tag. Um, if you want to add JavaScript in the body of your HTML, you add a script tag and then a source. This lets Chrome run it for you. So in that instance, you're opening this with live server. Where is it? I actually can never find live server. One sec. Thank you. Okay. You open with live server. What is running in Chrome right now is the HTML and the CSS are being rendered by Chrome. And then the JavaScript code that I have is being run by Chrome as well, um, which is this file. So if I go to F12, what's actually happening is in the console, it's just running my fucking JavaScript code and it's like spewing out in the website. Just you'd have to inspect and then go to the console a bunch of random shit. Um, like the loops and shit that I had. Uh, so that's how you get it to run in Chrome. Another way you can run JavaScript is by getting an engine and downloading yourself. And an example of that is Node.js, if you ever heard of it. Um, this is like, I don't know, for C++, you guys go and like you download like the G++ compiler, maybe. It's the same thing,
Run it on
class server.
class.
Yeah, I mean, either way works. Yeah. No, it's valid. Yeah, learn like
You can have VS Code connect to your remote repository and then code on VS
there's a
Code.
million ways to do everything. Yeah, that one is convenient. No, you can like use VS Code with the class server, which is cool. Uh yeah, so if you want to work in VS Code and do it, you would download Node.js, which we call a JavaScript runtime environment. It's just something that can like run your JavaScript code. We call it runtime because it's interpreted. Um, like if you download a compiler for a language, you are one time compiling the code from a source code file, and then you also will just run it. We say like runtime environment for JavaScript because you are writing your code and it's like just updating as you go. Like Chrome will just change what's happening on the fly and it goes from your source code. Um, let's see what else we got. So this is what's like actually relevant for web development, and why we use JavaScript. So when we go back to HTML and CSS, when we define elements with HTML, we we do things like add an ID so that with CSS we can like use a selector. So just to refresh everybody, there's no CSS. Um, if I wanted to select this button and make it like blue, I could do hashtag ID, open, and then color. Let's do blue. That said blue. Um, and if I go to my live server, one moment, index CSS. My guess is the live server actually died. No, it's just not blue. What did I do? I did hashtag ID. It's supposed to be hashtag click me. Please work now. Okay, good enough. It should be background color. Okay. It looks terrible, but if you want to select something by its ID to style it differently, you can use the ID from your HTML. Similarly, if you want to add functionality to something, you can select it by its ID with JavaScript, and now you can like use the functionality of JavaScript, which is an actual coding language, versus HTML just kind of like put stuff on the page. You can't do like variables or functions or loops. That's another reason that you'd use a JavaScript string. HTML is kind of just like there. There's no like variables or loops or whatever it is that you'd want normally. With JavaScript, um, you totally can do whatever it is that you want. Uh, what else? If you want to create elements, one sec. Uh, so I can just run through some of the functionalities. Basically, if you've ever seen, funny enough, if you've ever registered for a course at Georgetown, I'll just demonstrate real quick. They actually use JavaScript alerts. So if I go to Geo Experience, yeah, it's a fucking like miracle that they're still employed and they actually let errors in production. It's infuriating. But if I go to registration and I go to register for classes, watch this. Oh, maybe it'll, there we go. So this is an example of a JavaScript alert. Um, what you can do, and usually people do this for diagnostics or they make it look pretty. But basically what you can do is you can add, um, I mean, exactly what it looks like, an alert for the user, or usually for yourself, upon some condition. Um, JavaScript adds the functionality of basically, we call it like event-driven programming, um, in which you kind of like wait for something to happen and then you run some code versus like rendering everything at once. Um, so for instance, we can add, so let's say we take a look at this right here. Uh, basically, if we make a variable for our button, which is basically just grabbing the button by its ID in our HTML, we can then do things like adding, um, event listeners. So an event listener, and this is literally just like a function that we are given by whoever made JavaScript. Um, an event listener is essentially there's different types of events. There's hovering over something, there's clicking something like a button, there is refreshing a page, there is probably whatever you can think of, scrolling up, scrolling down, pressing a key. Um, but basically what happens is once that event happens, it runs the inside code. So for a button, you can think of how useful this is. Obviously throwing an alert on the screen is not like the most useful thing. But let's say when you click a button, you want to send the information from a survey to a database. That's how we'd use an event listener. Uh, if you want to have a clear button that like removes all of the fields from text boxes or HTML inputs, um, that way someone can like restart filling out a form. That's pretty good. If you want to literally switch to dark mode, like the little toggle wheel, you'd use JavaScript and an event listener on the click. Um, and when that click happens, you would literally just like uh you would have all of the things that you want to switch to dark colors as variables, and then you'd be like banner dot style dot background color equals whatever the dark one is. You could do like black. Um, so there's a bunch of things you can do, but basically what JavaScript allows you to do is like wait for some event to happen and then do something. Or what I'd say is just give functionality to like the pieces of your website. Um, what else? Comment events. Yep. So mouse over is hovering. When someone's typing is another one. When you submit, so just like when you click the submit button on a form. Um, yeah. So getting elements by IDs is great. I don't think you'd ever want to do by class, but if you did, you can do that for sure. Um, yep. That's kind of like, I don't know. I'd say that's like the basic, uh, like JavaScript itself, like what it's useful for. What I use JavaScript for most of the time is just like an API request. Um, and I think what we'll do is next Thursday, because I'm gonna cancel Tuesday. Next Thursday we can do APIs and API requests, and then the following week we can like make an app and like put everything together. We'll like We'll have an API. We'll have a very, very simple database, and then we'll do some HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and like put it all together so that if you guys ever want to like make something using any of the principles, you can kind of just like look at the app that we made. And I think that'll be the most helpful. Um, Sweet. Let me take a look at, God, I cannot believe that
Yeah.
they do that. Yeah. I'd have to read it again. I remember it saying like page layout. Um, so I'm assuming they had someone test how the page looks on different screen sizes. Uh, and if it like was weird in any way, they probably throw that alert. Or they might just throw the alert all the time and just let you know how it is. Yeah.
And
Um,
the fact that thousands of people you register for classes using that website twice a year.
Trust me, I know.
It is strange that that's still there.
Yeah, the registration system's kind of terrible. I'm impressed at how well it works for how like crappy it looks.
That's
Uh,
Yeah, it even possible on my phone.
yeah,
Like the layout container, page layout, so concept of the height there for the app, height defense and visual. I don't know.
I want to not have to do API keys. Give me one sec. I'm gonna try and find a super, super simple API. Simple API for testing. Star Wars API?
why did it redirect?
Yeah, what? Oh, I probably just got a virus. That sucks. Let's try that. Oh, that might have been. No, come on. Okay. I'll let you out like a few minutes early. And then I don't know. There's four people here. Do any of you have any like APIs that you're interested in using? Spotify is a good one.
Discord API, I programmed some Discord bots.
We could do Discord. Um, we could use a database and then pull our own data if we want. So we could use a database API. That might actually be more useful. Um, Yeah, you know what? We'll give Google some credit. So next time we'll use Firebase and we'll make like a super simple database and then we will uh like pull data from our database. This is similar to Superbase in the way that like you kind of just have like this isn't called a SQL database because it's not like Excel tables, but it's still storing data. Um, this would be an example of a JSON database. Are we familiar with JSON objects? Um, JSON is JSON. Um, but it's basically if you were to console log an object that you make in JavaScript. So if I F12 go here, let person equal that. Oh fuck, bruh. Let's make a very quick object. So I don't know, data colon one and then title colon title for objects. So if I were to now console.log this JSON object, um, you'd get a you'd like see what the JSON object is. Uh, JSON again being just JS, so JavaScript, and then object for the O, and then for the N, it's notation. Uh, all that means is it's literally going to be JSON objects. Very useful to know what they are. It's essentially key value inside curly brackets. Sorry, this kind of turned into a quick rant, but essentially this is all a JSON object is. So Firebase kind of just uses these instead of like Excel style tables, but it does the same thing at the end of the day. With that, I will actually finish. Have a great weekend, everybody. Um, and let me know if you have any questions or anything. But we'll do APIs next time.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.